Hi there, and welcome back. Randy Green here with Josh Dippold from Integrating Presence. And in the first segment, I was talking about a different approach to the Mandala Effect, some of the background. And in this segment, I know Josh has got some questions he wants to ask. So let's just jump right into it. And
yeah, the mainly comments, what I forgot the first time was, if we look at the kind of more base program level of this, we look at a police report, right? People filling out a police report, there's an accident, you have, 5, 6 witnesses, and they all witness the same event. They claim, however, their accounts of it are different. So I don't know how this might play into this when we're talking about kind of subjective reality and perceptual level of things. But then when we get into these collective things where everybody agrees on something, but then the rug kind of gets pulled out from under them. This is the end result of this in the base program, right?
And I want to jump in here because when we talk about the collective memories of, for instance, iTunes and not Looney Tunes and not Looney Tunes. Sorry about iTunes, I recall that because I watched these as a kid. So I remember that. I remember looking at it for some odd reason. I have these specific moments where it's like I was pointed towards, you need to be observant of this. When we talk about the different approaches, and okay, let me explain. If we go with the idea of as I talked about in the first segment, with the event program and how these, not as much when the Orions took over, but before with the event program with the Arcturians and the Alpha Centauri and some of the old world order groups and the colonizing race and the humans that were part of the old reality programs and their attempt to recalibrate some new type of program, that the purpose of that one was, of course, to lead humanity into an awakening process. They had done it prior with what we say from the 18th and 19th centuries and into the 2000s, where they were working with what we call spirituality and spiritism and all of these different approaches, trying to teach people about that life was ongoing, but it was still restricted within the astral barrier programs of spirituality so that they would remain in control. And that's the word I'm trying to avoid here, because what is control? Nobody really has control of a reality, but they were nesting upon the original reality programs and the original interactive simulation programs, and they re-engineered it already back then 15,000 years ago as part of the takeover. And these groups were under the control of other groups that were positioned in some other, the Draco systems, which we know of. And the Dracos took off in 2020, at least the larger groups, and we have remaining little scavenger groups. So things are, again, it's not simple, clear cut, and there are cycles where these groups come back because they're forced to come back. They're not present here all the time, and all of these very, very complex dynamics of the older order reality programs. Which means when I talk about it's interactive and it's a simulation, it's not a holographic simulation as the computer science simulations. It's much more complex. It's not a simulation as is suggested in the movie The Matrix. It is not a simulation as it is suggested in the Mandala Effect movie from 2019 or a film. It's not based upon that theory that goes with computer sciences and computer ideas of how to create a simulation that runs on multiple possibilities, that branches out in different timelines and alternate realities and these kind of things. It's not in that manner. At some point later on, I will try to explain how I see things, but this is not where I want to go here, because then we branch completely off into a different discussion. But why did the Mandala Effect happen? Why did these glitches in the event program happen? And for me and how I see it and what I get when I look into it and look into the dimensions and the programs that were engineered by the different groups was that they were looking into the groups that they were pulling in and literally replicated the memories of different people. And we know that people have For instance, when the Aqua song, I'm a Barbie girl, right? We have I'm a Barbie girl in a Barbie world. That's the typical one. But they are actually saying I'm a Barbie girl in the Barbie world, because they pointing towards it's the Barbie world. But because our memory is perhaps the brain finds it easier to remember a Barbie world than the Barbie world, or we could hear it differently, alluding to Josh's explanation of when people are overlooking some kind of incident. Each person will have a different reflection of it, because they were not, what we could say, focused in the moment. They were thinking about something else. They only had snippet of it. And then the brain fills in the blanks. That's what the brain does. It sees some things and then it fills in the blanks. And these blanks that the brain fills in are computable, to use that word, with what we know of already. So the brain can only fill in the blanks with what it already has got. I remember, again, some of you have seen that as well. You see something on the street or something on the ground or whatever. And since you can't decipher what it is right away, your brain tries very, very hard. Is it a plastic bag? Is it a hat? Is it a cat? Is it a dog? What is it? And then you have to go over there. Then you can see, oh, it's actually something else. Or the typical one, you see a branch on the ground and it is full of little, what you call a crooked, do you call that? And you think it's a snake, but it's not. But your brain interprets it as a snake and you respond to it as if it's a snake. So we have these incidents where the brain literally tries to fill in the blanks and come up with things itself. And many of these things that we did as children, where our brains were not developed yet, created glitches in our memory, as in kind of, we heard the song I'm a Barbie girl in a Barbie world, and then we stuck with that idea that was the case, because we didn't hear the, but we heard due to our personal experiences or whatever we came up with. Or I remember ABBA's song, which one is it? A Midnight Lover or something. I heard it as a letter. So and that got stuck with me. What was the song? I can't remember which one. I don't.
But the Jimi Hendrix one. Excuse me while I kiss this guy. Yeah. But it's actually kiss the sky. Yeah. People heard it wrong. Yeah. But what I meant more is, like, we talked about C-3PO, and we remembered him all one color, and apparently that was never the case. And so these are the things that people agree on, and they're just like adamant that this, no way that this is like that. You know, how do we explain that? And I even talked to a guy one time in a tea shop who claimed to be a Harvard professor, which was weird, but I mean, who knows? But he said people in South Africa would actually fight people to uphold their belief about how they remembered Nelson Mandela. Some did claim that he died in prison at a certain time, and then they were ready to fight each other over it, and that was really wild. Yeah. But how do we account for these things that people are adamant, like Luke, I am your father, but it's supposed to be, when you hear it back now, it's no, I am your father. Yeah. And
that's the whole case with the event program, because it's intrusive in all layers of reality, because it's a reality program. It's like let's just play with the movie The Matrix. It's like you recode the entire program, but you need to recode it so it is similar to what we know. So we don't wake up and suddenly the sky is pink and the trees are purple and suddenly you look different or whatever. So they have taken the collective memories of people. But as I explained, since people have glitches in their memories, we perceive things differently. We perceive it inaccurately. And when we talk about the technocratic groups, they are engineered for a specific purpose from the get-go. They don't change, they don't develop, they don't go beyond their programming, let's put it that way, their biometric code systems. They are exactly from once they engineered to when they go out of functionality, they're exactly the same. They don't learn, they don't record, they don't in any ways or forms change. For that, you have to be a replicate that has genetic markers that can integrate code system and holographic teachings or information system from where they can adapt their genetic structure. These are the semi-organic ones. But the fully organic ones, they are machines, but they are very, very intelligent machines. but they are the ones that have been used in the fourth dimension as well as inside our reality field, because they can go in and out of the reality program. They have the code system to remain intact. Whereas if you do a semi-organic or a fully organic one from another dimension, they have to recalibrate when they enter into the Truman Show, when they enter into our reality field. Because frequencies, as we are part of, doesn't exist in any other reality. Science keeps telling us there's only 4% we can account for. The rest is unknowns. We don't know what that is, hence they call it dark energy and dark matter. That's the holographic energetic realities with a completely different energetic structure. And that's why some of the crafts come in and looks like orbs, and other comes in and can take on what we call a crystallized, solidified frequency form that we can recognize as a physical, tangible object. But it's only tangible as long as they want it to be. So these grays, they come in, and they can go in and out. I call these crafts that they're using called jolts, because they can go into the frequency spectrum. And since these grays have that perception of things are exactly as it's supposed to be, they don't change. They come in with a machine mind that also looks as humans the same way. They didn't understand the original program that the colonizers made, where there were the ability to learn, but false learning processes or artificially created learning processes for the purpose of keeping us in the bio-emotional and mental fields that runs with the frequency fence and the astral barrier, producing what we could say kind of transformational information systems that then mimic the understanding of the original reality program that was meant as a restoration program to recalibrate original genetic structures from the timeline event. So you have these reality programs that were set in, and the grays that did that, they copy-pasted literally from the collective memories of their subjects and put it into the reality program, and hence the glitches of if a person saw it that way, they would go in and measure how many, literally as in kind of which percentage would see it this way and how many would see it the other way, and then they would say the majority saw it this way. Or if, for instance, if we have one little thing where only a few saw it, then if they hadn't any other specimens that would come in and say, okay, I saw it this way as the GIF or Jiffy or whatever, then they would take what they had and they run with it. Literally. So for me, that's the explanation I've got from these groups, is that's the reason why we have the Mandala Effect, is because the reprogramming of the event program and the reality program and the information systems they had to work with from people they had pulled in, they literally scaled that up and said, this is how it is, and then allowed for glitches because the original program was already breaking down. So the question is, why did they do that? Because the controllers at that time was not ready to let go of the control. I have talked about this in some of the Earth Councils and Stellar Councils, and what we are to do with these groups of people, the breakaway civilizations and what have you, and what they have done, and that's still up for not as much, but that's not where I want to go today. But the point being is, you have a full reality program that's run for 15,000 years. It has an interactive simulation program that can simulate and reflect back to the ones that are part of it, creating what looks like a progression of the specimens inside the reality program. And it can adapt to our perception of reality, hence the collective fields. It can adapt to individualistic, how we see the world, hence the different types of perceptions. It's a very, very nuanced program that was very, very similar to the original solar system reality programs. And I'll talk about that in my perception logs as well as in my whole academy material here and there and everywhere, because that ties into a holographic energy system and how that functions in 6 dimensions. So we have a reality program that originally functioned in 6 dimensions and were capable of going up to 12 dimensions, where the base level was just 6 dimensions. That's our foundational original holographic architecture, 6 dimensions. where we can then add in from the inner and the core domain and build up a higher energetic structure in more subtle layers of reality. So that's a completely different way of seeing things, and we were then diminished into only function within biofield, emotional field, and mental field that were then built up in layers mimicking the original 12 to 21 dimensional abilities of progression inside our solar system, to downsizing into a minimum of layers of distortion energies. And then we could say since we were not using our consciousness potentials correctly, then the base program and the astral baryon frequency fence became part of our distortion. It became part of all of these subconscious and collective fields and whatever of distortion that are now governing the majority of humanity. So that's part of that.
That's a very great explanation, and it doesn't really conflict with science's theories on it either. You just take it way, way beyond that. So what I think of when I see this perceptual thing, what science gives an example of, there's a certain pattern, right, too, and there'll be missing pieces, but the mind, or whatever you want to say, fills in the missing pieces, right? But some people their perception is more developed, acute, they can actually detect where there's missing pieces. So with that example in the base program, it led me to wonder, well, just use the Jif or Jiffy thing, or Stover's stovetop stuffing. It's just stovetop stuffing or whatever, and something's missing. Was there an objective one? Was there an objective product the way it actually was, but people were adding things into it or misinterpreting it? So you had one group that wasn't actually perceiving it right, and then one group that was. Or you know what I mean? Was there actually an objective thing to it? To each of these little conflicts of the. You understand what I'm getting at here?
Yes, I understand. Mm-hmm. What I'm getting of information on that one is that there were, as we know from different projects, sometimes it just needs to be implemented now, and then it had glitches, and too bad. It's just
That's what I was thinking too.
It was close enough.
Yes.
And why did they allow for that? Well, first and foremost, with the event program and with the new technology, they were able to mind wipe. Before, we were controlled in our thought and emotional processes and stuck within specific programs, as I talk about in the Souls of Humanity book. But with the new event program, because they wanted to allow for a tailored awakening process out of the old world order programs and into a new reality setting that would lead to what they had created and wanted to create as the new Atlantis, the new fifth dimensional Earth, that they were getting people ready to awaken into via the military project setup that were linked into specific type of extraterrestrial genomes and extraterrestrial technology that would fit the reverse engineered technology they had got from these groups. And the Arcturians and some of the Greys that were part of the parallel universal matrix races, they were then been given access to create their hybrid projects inside our reality, and that was the trade-off. It all comes down to genetics. The reason why there is so much focus on the technology is because that's the first step of the full disclosure. We got this technology and see how the benefit you have had of this technology. Oh, by the way, we traded it for human genetics. But we needed to do so because the world was falling apart, and these kind of good explanations. So with that, I want to end this segment, and we will get back into the next one.